People don't want things to be built. Neighbors have opinions. It's difficult to get something through the planning and funding process. And then once you do that, you have to figure out how in the world are you going to get it financed and actually built. With the additional risk, there is a significant amount of reward at the end.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Radical Hospitality Podcast, where we dive deep into all things architecture, development, and hospitality. I've got a great guest for us today, Mike Demson. He is a growth marketer turned real estate developer with a passion for boutique hospitality. He was one of the early employees at Airbnb, where he helped lead global growth initiatives, giving him a rare insight into the short-term rental ecosystem just as it was booming. Today, he's making some bold moves in boutique hotel development with two really cool standout projects and a dozen others, but we'll focus on the top two here of the Stonehouse in Sonoma and 400 Bay San Francisco. Mike brings a rare intersection of like tech, real estate, hospitality on everything in construction, not just designing spaces, but making great experiences. So I'm super excited to hop into all of these different realms that Mike's bringing to us today. So Mike, welcome to Radical Hospitality.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction. Excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, hey, let's kind of just like start a little bit maybe at the Airbnb venture. You know, you're one of the early employees back then. And today, like Airbnb has become this behemoth of a company that's like changed the landscape in so many ways of both from a real development standpoint, from a digital marketing standpoint. I was in a meeting last night with a bunch of community developers in Jefferson County. Like we're even talking right now, you know, about how to build new projects, what those projects are going to shape to life, that all kind of have the seed back to Airbnb, which started as this, you know, couple of dudes renting out their couch. So you probably had a little bit of a window into that world. So what was it like, you know, early on days in Airbnb?
So I actually got to work with Brian Chesky and Joe Gebbia directly. At this point, you know, that was pre-IPO. You know, it wasn't that big of a company. And it was primarily centered around urban areas, you know, people renting out a room, an apartment in San Francisco. That was kind of, you know, how it started. And I was brought in to essentially grow both the host and the guest business. It's kind of like a, obviously, two-sided market. You know, you have people hosting and you have guests that make bookings. So it you know, changed a ton during that time, but it was an incredible experience. I got to bring some pretty unique perspectives, working at, you know, other large companies. You know, it was just a cool experience and really gave me sort of a behind the scenes look really into, you know, what short-term rentals were and what kind of potential they had to grow and become what they've become today. And that was really kind of the initial seed, if you will, to turn towards boutique hotels and hospitality as an industry.
So what was any kind of stories in the Airbnb place when you guys were, you know, getting things up and going? What did it look like behind the scenes when you were working there? Anything you learned coming out of that company too?
You bet. One of the perspectives that I think I've carried over into my own development that, you know, I really learned there was, you know, there are no details that are too small. And there ultimately are no projects that are too big. Brian Chesky is essentially you know, known for, you know, what he spoke about at Y Combinator with founder mode. That's, you know, take it for what it is with a grain of salt. You know, there's just this unrelenting focus on the details and customer experience, on, you know, whether it's a digital presence, a funnel, a web page, landing page, or a direct booking site that you're building out for a property. No detail is too small and no project is too big to get off the ground.
Did you copy the secret algorithm when you left to like move all of our properties to the top of market?
So believe it or not, you know, the algorithm and the underlying product is essentially based on, you know, open sourced data. You know, if you think about supply and demand, you know, the more a listing is getting booked, the better reviews, the better feedback, you know, it's going to get pushed directly to the top. And, you know, to this day, I still have about a dozen short-term rentals that are throughout California. And that's, you know, something that I wish I had a secret, but what it really comes down to is focusing on the guest experience, making sure that, you know, your expectations are met, that the customer has an amazing experience and, you know, that they're able to, you know, enjoy their time.
Cool. Well, walk us through that a little bit. So you're deep into boutique hotels now. Talk to us a little bit. How'd that transition go from Airbnb to boutique hotels? Sounds like you acquired some short-term rentals in between.
So that transition was pretty interesting. I think you kind of already know the story, but for your audience, there are tightening Airbnb regulations in my market in San Francisco and up north in Marin and Sonoma and Napa. It's not outlawed directly, but the cities and municipalities are starting to regulate. That sort of was something that I recognized very early on. And a couple of years back, we ended up acquiring the Stone House in Sonoma. That was the beginning of last year in 2024. And, it was a commercial property, was more than 100 years old. It was built in 1909 by some Italian masons that came to Sonoma. And, it originally served as like a carriage house for people that were visiting the area. And then over the course, it was changed. It was adapted. It was used as a behavioral and like an inpatient treatment center at one point. And, it was more or less run down when we purchased it. So it was a deep value add. We ended up spending more than $1 million on the renovation just to get it to a point where we were able to get all of the sign-offs, all the permits, everything that was needed to operate it as a boutique hotel.
So originally, was it behavioral health or was it like actual like lockdown jail type facility? What was it?
Originally, it was a carriage house. Yeah, it's like a bed and breakfast or an inn.
Okay.
But then, it changed hands a few times. When we purchased it, the most recent use turned out to be that it was an inpatient treatment facility.
Okay.
For people that were, I guess, had some issues that they were there, and it's not sort of that traditional hospitality property that you're buying turnkey.
Well, it's a beautiful property right now. It looks like it kind of sets into like at least in the wine country, if not surrounded by some vineyards on it as well. The rooms look gorgeous. You got some of this like stone character with this real rich wood throughout the projects. What did the renovation of this project look like? What all did you guys get in and touch?
Everything. When I say down to the studs, it was down to the bare rock. Everything from the flooring, new framing, new drywall, electrical, plumbing. It was pretty much everything. Essentially, did completely new lighting, check. It was we were starting from scratch.
How many square feet and how many rooms is this?
14 rooms, just over 10,000 square feet.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if you know Neil and Shika. They just bought this, or they have under contract this old jail that they're looking to convert into basically this kind of level. You guys ought to really chat. I know they're trying to figure out, numbers and what something like this would cost to do. How did you guys approach it and it's one of these hard things to you have to underwrite it to know that it's going to work, which means you have to kind of guess what it's going to operate at. You have to guess what your inputs are, the buy, the build, and make sure that pencils out. And then the architect or designer needs to fit in there somewhere. Oftentimes you're putting a budget together before you've actually designed it. How did you guys approach it to come up with numbers? And I know you guys also have a deep background in construction. So what does that look like? What's the process and approach?
So, we started, we hadn't opened, we realized this is a very deep value add property. Obviously it was not turnkey. We knew it was going to be a bit of a project. We expected that it would take about 6 months. It ended up taking about a year to really get up and running because, it took longer and it cost more, about double what we were expecting initially. And when we underwrote it, we looked at,
and that was a year on the construction. Did you have permitting and design phase in that as well, or did you guys kind of design build it, or how did that go?
Design build it. Thompson Builders of Nevada is kind of the de facto GC. and a really great partner that we've worked with on just about all of our projects.
Mm-hmm.
They're family, so it's a good thing because there's that trust and partnership built in. And we really
But
like.
even design build, I mean, you are putting together documents and permits, I would assume, for a project this size. What was kind of the time frame for that?
We were expecting anywhere from 1 to 3 months,
Mm-hmm.
depending on what we found with the county and municipalities that we're dealing with. But what we found is that the city of Santa Rosa was very much excited about turning this property into something new because it was sitting there, it was run down, it was not generating any tax revenue, and it wasn't really an attraction for Sonoma County at that point. So we expected around 90-day turnaround. It ended up taking closer to 180.
Yeah.
And that was, to be expected. But, we had a good architect and a good team that was able to get the drawings submitted. And we essentially worked within the confines of the existing building footprint. We tried not to make too many changes to the building layout or the footprint, just because we already knew we were going to need new plumbing, new electric. It was going to be a heavy lift, so we wanted to make it as streamlined as we possibly could.
So roughly about 6 months on the design and permitting. So both of those together, and then about a year on the construction. That seems about right. And then what was the construction cost for renovation on this, or cost per square foot ish?
All in just over $1 million. The original budgeted 500,000.
Yep.
And that's just sort of how it goes. We ran into one issue after the next. We actually had some neighbors complain, filing petitions. At one point, they even said that they really didn't like the color that we were painting, and they just objected to it. There's no real reason other than a personal opinion, but when you're dealing with neighbors, it all comes down to PR, optics, and how you manage the situation that you're in.
It's not for the faint of heart, right? Yeah, there is definitely challenges all along the way, and I think you're right. It's that how do you communicate that back? You can pretty much guarantee if you're going to step into a project and change something in a nice established area, that you're going to have people that are going to have their opinions. Sometimes opinions is the light word. So you were at about $1 million. It's about 10,000 square feet. Is that what you said? So about $100 a square foot on renovation.
Somewhere in that range. Yeah, there's certain parts that require a little more, other parts that require a little less.
Okay. And what year was this?
Last year.
Last year. So 2024. So that's not too far out. Is that if you were to talk now, that's a GC in-house number, I kind of assume. If you were to talk with clients that were looking to budget something like this, how would you approach it? What would you say to start, just mentally thinking? Obviously, there's a big range of construction costs depending on what you
do. It all comes down to fixtures, finishes, and what details you choose to focus on, and which ones you want to put a little bit more resources into. If I was doing this with another GC, I'd probably expect right around 10 to 20% increase in a cost plus sort of arrangement. But if you're doing fixed cost, or there are other ways to do it, it could be a little bit more. It just comes down to what's the finished product that you're looking to bring to market, and then what's the demand for that product. This is Sonoma. It's obviously in that upper mid-scale range. It's not luxury. It's not the Four Seasons. It's not a mom, if you will. It's a technology forward property where guests check in and out with their phone. Everything's automated. They get an access code when they're ready to check in. They'll get text messages offering early check-in, late checkout, add a guest, add a pet, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's fairly hands off. I'm based in Marin, so I'm just a little bit south of the property. So if there is a need or something comes up where I have to be there, it's pretty simple. It's quick and easy.
So this is all remote check-in. Do you guys have any on-site staff at all?
We use 1099 contractors for
Mhm.
cleaning. We have maintenance in house. The nice thing that is, over the last 6 months, we've essentially operated this anywhere from a 30 to a 35% expense ratio. And that includes all in OTA fees. So whether it's Airbnb, VRBO, Booking.com, after we pay all expenses, we're operating at a very profitable pace at this point.
That's awesome. Do you have a management company on it, or do you manage it, or what's your management situation look like?
So we've got a separate property management company that works on just the listing and essentially handles the customer inquiries, pre-booking. And then we've
Mhm.
got virtual assistants in-house that I've got on multiple projects that help with any guest requests, any maintenance issues. An entire system built in to automate things so that it's not a heavy day-to-day operational demand.
Gotcha. So it's kind of a little hybrid. You guys have
Yeah.
a management company and then some in-house. And then it sounds like you're kind of on the emergency call. Like if there's an issue, you're the guy to go check and fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. All right. Well, that's cool. What kind of roughly percentage wise do you pay for management on something like this?
So we've gone through a couple property managers. We started out at 15% and we've gone down to 12% at this point. So it's, we could bring 100% in-house. And, at some point we may do that, especially because, we're looking at other hospitality projects also in the San Francisco Bay Area. We're looking in Napa, in San Francisco, and that's sort of the little corner of the Bay Area that we like.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. I think that seems about right. From the low end on these larger hotels, like it took us a while to kind of get our head around between this kind of space in between Airbnb and larger management that, kind of close to the 10% seems like what we're going to end up with on the red. Is there things that you like about the management and that if anybody's looking to do this type of project that you would recommend, hey, make sure you're looking at these things or things that you would think needs to be improved when you're looking to bring on a management partner for these types of developments?
Do it yourself first.
Mm.
And if you don't have the experience or the desire to learn, partner with someone that does. There is no substitute for experience. You're going to get your lessons and you're going to pay for them one way or the other.
And
That's,
did you do that on the short-term rentals? Did you manage your own short-term rentals or did you use a management company on them?
everything that we do is in-house. I've had virtual assistants for a while that have been helpful. If you want to take a look at one of my favorite short-term rentals is Peaceful Waters in North Tahoe. And, we've got currently a manager that is taking care of the listing and the day-to-day. It's a good place for sure. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful.
And we just started working with them. So yeah, it's check out the nightly rate.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, that's like renting out a whole hotel right there.
Yeah.
That's a good nightly rate.
Yeah. It's beautiful property, dock on the water. It's got a boathouse, and the cool thing is we actually are doing the same thing here that we're doing at the Stone House. It came with a few adjoining parcels, and we're building additional cottages there as well. So when this is rented out over the July 4th weekend, for example, we'll still have a place to go and stay if we want.
I love it. How big of a house is this?
Just over, I want to say, 1,000 square feet.
Yeah. So you guys bought the existing house and then you're in the process of adding no, you built it
from the ground up. It started out with, it was like a shed that was, built way back from the water, had a dock, which in Lake Tahoe is, I don't want to say that it's rare, but it's one of those things where, if you have a boat and you have a group of people, it really does make the experience pretty cool being able to be on the water. So we essentially tore that house down. We subdivided on across several other parcels, sold those off to other developers, essentially have a zero cost basis. And then we saved the very best parcel that's right on the water next to the dock to essentially build from the ground up with an architect. It's an amazing place. I'm actually going to spend, I think, about a month there between the end of July and middle of August.
Nice. And so when you it rents out, you rent out for it's the whole house kind of deal. It's not separate rooms.
Correct. People generally during the high season, Tahoe is kind of an interesting market. It's basically a 4-season market.
Mm-hmm.
It's great during the spring and summer because there's tons of hiking, incredible mountain biking, and just a ton of golf. There's a ton of events, and then of course during the fall and winter there's skiing, Palisades, and it's actually right across the street from Homewood, so it's a good area.
So can you give us some high numbers on something like this? What does a house like this cost to build? What did you guys have into it?
So we expected it would cost about $2 million. It ended up costing closer to $3 million.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And how's it doing performance wise on that investment?
Depends on how much it gets rented and how much time we're willing to give up when we want to be there. If it were rented year round, short-term rental, the gross number would be right around 1.5 million.
So it's a little bit of a lifestyle asset. Sounds like you guys are getting a month out of it. I mean, that's kind of a great deal. You're probably getting this, incredible mansion almost free, if not cash flows. That seems like a fun way to do it. Is that with partners, or is this your development, or
just family? Pretty much everything that we do, at least up to this point, has been our own equity. We actually recently started a fund, Thompson Builders Fund, and have more than half a dozen properties that were in the process of their entitlements or planning phases to essentially get up and running. But everything to this point has just been our own capital.
Awesome. Well, I know you're doing some entitlements with your Sonoma project, right? Like you're adding another 67 units on that. Can I let's pull up the Google Earth on that. Like, where are you putting these units and what's going in there?
You bet. So the cool thing about this property is, when we bought the stone house, it came with, about an acre parcel next door. So we worked with a zoning consultant, we worked with an attorney, and there's essentially space. If you look it's essentially a little bit lower than the stone house.
So this area just to the south?
Exactly. And, it also, it has the area above the parking lot. We essentially worked with HVS, their brokerage firm. They work in the hospitality space. We did an RFP. We ended up getting matched with IHG to essentially turn this property into the very first in their vignette collection. So this is going to be a flagged hotel. Currently, it's just a boutique hotel that we're running independently. But at the point when we get the entitlements and actually get it built, we're going to be working closely with IHG to bring their first vignette collection property online in Sonoma.
What are the things? So what does that process look like to qualify with IHG? And what are the benefits of going with a brand like that versus just doing this on boutique style?
So, going into this, we didn't know what we didn't know. And that's a simple way of saying, we learn, we surround ourselves with consultants and people that have more experience than us. This is an amazing property. It's an amazing location, and it's got a ton of history. the cool thing is, it's more than 100 years old for this building. We needed to be sensitive to the architectural style, the design, the layout of the addition to make sure that it doesn't look like it doesn't fit, because frankly, it's got to be stone. It's got to fit with the wine country vibe, and it's going to have an event space. It's going to have um, a lot of amenities that it would be tough to pull off on our own, just doing a boutique hotel. Um, I'm excited about it. Honestly, I'd never done a flagged hotel or a ground up development of that scale in that asset class, but I think it's going to be a pretty cool project for sure.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. Do you have handy any of the renderings or images of the project? If you don't, that's fine. But if they're somewhere quick, it'd be fun to see them.
I'll send them to you after the show. I
After the
don't
show,
have
yeah,
them in
shoot them
front of
over.
me.
We'll slice them in. I think that'd be
Yeah.
awesome to see. I love the work. What was the and so you guys are in the middle of entitlements for that. For our audience, kind of explain the difference between entitlements versus the actual design and permitting. What do those phases look like, and what does it take to get through that?
So, I kind of oversimplify things. There's, the early stages when you're entitling raw land. This obviously it isn't raw land, but the parcel next door, there was nothing there. So we need to get through the planning process and get sign off from the county of Sonoma and the city of Santa Rosa to get this approved. And then, once that 67 rooms are, we essentially will have the entitlements. Right, we're allowed to build that building. You're obviously an architect, so you of course know. And then, once we have that, we move into the permitting phase, where we're actually going through getting all of the consultants to sign off, all the structural engineers, geotech, all those other parties that need to weigh in on what we have that's approved. And then, of course, my favorite, the construction phase. I know that you're kind of right in the middle of that with your hotel. But yeah, we're excited to actually get into the ground up development and seeing something built where nothing was before.
And so one of the things I'm kind of interested in is in some of these areas where it's difficult to get entitlements, but it would be highly valuable to have additional hotel rooms or use of space. What was your thought in terms of the value of the land increase much from that investment of the entitlements to having it entitled? Just that portion, um, you know, do you guys look at that as an investment and a potential sellout option, or is it, hey, just 100% through, or this is not? I mean, obviously you're looking to build this thing out, but is there value created in that entitlements exercise in your mind that in itself, a development strategy?
You bet. So just about everything that we do is opportunistic. So what that means is we're not afraid of buying raw land, figuring out how to get water, sewer, electric, all the utilities hooked up. That's sort of a business development component for what we do with Thompson Builders. So we're, I'd say, not risk averse in that sense, but yeah, there absolutely is a significant increase in equity value and return on equity when you buy a piece of raw land and get it entitled, or you get through the planning process. I'd say anywhere from 2 to 3x in California and the Bay Area in particular, just because we tend to operate in Sonoma, Napa, Marin, and San Francisco. I also like Monterey County, but those are kind of the main areas that we focus on. And if you think about supply and demand, right? I studied econ as an undergraduate. I spent 3 years of my life looking at those little supply and demand graphs. And the interesting thing about real estate development in the Bay Area and California in particular is there's a lot of NIMBY sentiment. People don't want things to be built. Neighbors have opinions. it's difficult to get something through the planning and permitting process. And then once you do that, you have to figure out how in the world are you going to get it financed and actually built. So there are a lot of hurdles, a lot of challenges, but it's something that we gravitate towards because with the additional risk, there is a significant amount of reward at the end.
Yeah. So on something like this, you would purchase the land outright. It would take how long to get through an entitlements in a area like this?
Can it vary wildly. We also buy, already entitled land and then, just go through the permitting process and get something built. And, we have to look at the time value of money in that sense as well, because we've had subdivisions and other projects that have drawn on for 3, 4, 5+ years. I'm working on another development, which it's not a hospitality project, but it's actually taken 10+ years to get to the point where we're going from entitled project to permitted project.
Yeah. My dad is kind of getting into the cattle business a little bit. And I think one thing that's interesting with the cattle business is, you would think it would, surmount to, buying a baby cow and raising it up to, a full cow and slaughtering it. But, they chop this up into all different ranges where you have, guys that specialize on, from, birthing baby cows, whatever they are. And then you have guys that take it from, year 0 to 1, and then from 1 to 3, and they'll have different lots that they'll move it for. And then, and then they'll have a feeding lot at the end where they'll fatten it up with grain and then sell it. And so I think with development, it's interesting that often can happen where some types of development may be better suited for people to come in and develop out just what they call the horizontal, the land, getting the entitlements in place. Usually that means the use right, just to be able to be allowed, to say put a hotel at this site, increases, say it was a residential property or an industrial property, and changing that use or getting the, height allowment can be a lot of process, even if the zoning, maybe even the zoning permits it, but you still have to take it through a public hearing process oftentimes. And so there's a lot of work that's done during that phase. And some people are set up well, and companies are set up well to do that, and I think there's other companies that can pick it up, take it through maybe the building permit phase. There's other companies that will pick them up already permitted and start construction. I think that's kind of, an interesting development. Obviously some companies probably like yourself take it all the way through, and, that's great as well. But there's different sectors in each of those. And it sounds like you guys are pretty good about bringing the right team members and specialists in for each of those phases. So something for people to think about that are interested into getting to development is, what does the timelines realistically look like? What are the team members that you may need to realistically bring in? Anything to add or thoughts around that of people interested in getting into this type of development?
Find a good architect. Make friends with your banker. They're going to be your largest financial partner. If you're getting a 65% loan to value, also pay your architects on time or ahead of, or maybe right as soon as they submit invoices. That's one thing that, working in the industry, I've found when you do what you say you're going to do and you exceed expectations, other people will essentially either match or also to do theirs. I think that the people that are actually doing the designing and figuring out, sizes of doorways, exteriors, elevations. I was never gifted artistically. I just didn't mind doing some hard work growing up. So
I didn't pay you to say that, Mike, but I would have. I wish more developers out there thought that way. Sometimes they look at us and they confuse us with the bank, and I think that we're their bank partners and that they'll pay us at the end. So I think that honestly is a secret sauce. Is your architects are here to partner with you, and they're here to make sure that you're successful. And if you treat them right, they will treat you right. Believe me. We're managing multiple projects, and it's just like money goes to where it's treated best, so do architects, and if you want to take care of your partners, they will take care of you. Not that we do that. We take care of all of our clients, but there is some clients that look and value that. And we're gonna treat them best so that they can be the most successful, because that's just the way that it's going to generate to be more productive. And in the day, architects are in this business because they're usually passionate about creating spaces, and they got into it not all dollar driven, but passion driven. And if they can work with developers that are thinking about making spaces, thinking about how to create a win-win project for everybody, those make the good partners and those make good projects.
One of my favorite questions to our architects that we work with is this space somewhere that you'd like to spend time? Would you take your family here? Would you want to spend some of your leisure time in this area? And would these amenities fit with what you're looking to do? And I think when you can have a sense of empathy and put yourself in the other person's shoes and think about the guest and the customer first, you get a better product at the end of the day.
Yeah, love that. Well, let's pivot a little bit. 400 Bay Street. So you guys got a cool project underway in San Francisco. You want to give us a little rundown on this project and overview on it?
Yeah, this is a fun project. Obviously, you can see from the price, previously started more than double that. We're essentially getting this property at a fire sale deal. Our purchase price is 1.2. We're closing just in a couple of weeks on July 7th. And this is in an incredible part of San Francisco. I'd say in the northern part of the city are three primary areas that I really like to spend. I lived in San Francisco in the Marina for more than 8 years. And that's the area kind of right at the bottom of the Golden Gate Bridge on San Francisco. It's right next to North Beach, which is where this particular site is. Obviously, you can see Safeway and Trader Joe's. It's in a commercial area. And then just past that, above it, there's actually Pier 39. That's got the Ferris wheel, primary cable car, pick up and drop off, and that area where all the SEALs hang out. So it's one of the most family-friendly parts of the city. It's got some of the best restaurants. There's Polk Street, there's Union Street, and there's Chestnut Street. Three incredible commercial corridors. It's basically where all of the young people want to be and want to hang out. I had a running joke with my friends that lived in other parts of the city that I actually saved on rent because they would always have to take Ubers to come meet me in the Marina or North Beach. Pack Heights is also another great part of the city. So yeah, we essentially negotiated this down. It's an overseas seller. They're based in China. They essentially entitled and got approvals and building permits for 12 units at this particular site. We realized that
this original design that's kind of got listed out there.
Yeah, it's kind of, this rendering is a little funky. It's a little old.
Yeah.
We've made a ton of updates. We essentially negotiated the purchase price and the basis going from $3 million down to 1.2.
And so what were the things that you guys found with their initial design that was problematic, and how did you guys take that and improve it for where you're at now?
So we're pretty fortunate that we have kind of the pre-construction and value engineering expertise with Thompson Builders. That allowed us to look very closely at their design, drawings, and we figured out that this person is listing it because it doesn't pencil. He's not able to get financing. He's not able to get it built because it's going to cost more to build than it'll be worth at the end of the day. Looking at ADR, occupancy, what the AirDNA and CoStar data suggests for this particular area, that even at, at 80 or 83% occupancy with a $300 ADR, it's not going to pencil with 12 rooms needed. That increased density of 25% to get to 16 rooms. And we need to figure out how to basically cut the construction budget more or less in half, because previously it had this massive basement that required incredibly expensive drilled piers because this part of the city is it's not the most stable. Obviously, California, you're prone to earthquakes, close to the water. You've got to have shoring. You've got to have the right kind of building materials and plan in place. So we essentially removed the basement. We removed a ton of common area. We added a ground floor retail space, which actually adds about $1 million in value at the end of the day that we didn't account for in our underwriting. So that was sort of something that we did an NDA with the architect, and we basically said, hey, if we're going to move forward with making these adjustments, we need to make sure that we're on the same team and that you're not going to take our value engineering directly to the seller and then basically do it for him. So that's how we approached it.
Yeah. So did you guys able to, when you took the basement out, did you guys move away from piers? Are you guys doing footings, or what type of foundation is allowed in San Francisco? I know you guys have a lot of earthquakes and things out there.
So we found that mat slab was going to be the most efficient, cost effective. We're going to do the first floor with steel, and then the next 3 floors with wood. So, that gives us some latitude to essentially reduce the construction budget and to make this thing pencil.
And a mat slab, is that just a big thick slab across the whole floor?
Exactly.
With beams in it, or no beams, or is it floating?
It's got reinforcement. It's got footings.
Sure.
It's going to have quite a bit of steel. And,
How thick of a slab does that end up being?
I want to say 9 or 10 inches.
Okay.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. Kind of doubling, like which, you're doubling a 4-inch slab to a 9-10 inch, but maybe you're taking out all of the footings. Is that all done in one pour, or is that a multiple pour situation?
It'll be done in a single pour. Probably, we're going to need a few trucks brought in, but that shouldn't be an issue.
So what do you think taking the piers out? I assume it was, well, you had a full basement. You had basement, walls, and probably a basement slab and piers. So you lost that square footage, but what do you think that was a cost savings to bring that up and just do a mat slab?
1.5 million is what we were able to trim.
Wow. That's significant. I should have talked to you, Mike. We're pouring piers right now, buddy. We're in zero lot line situation, and we had regular footings, and they were designed right up next to the adjacent building. And for some reason, the structural engineer didn't design those footings so that they would remain on our property. And so we went through one round of redesigning to eliminate all of those footings, and we had to go to piers so that we could essentially not undercut the adjacent building. So we have a slab with the turn down against the adjacent building, that goes down with piers. And we ended up taking piers throughout the rest of the foundations for various reasons. I'm highly questioning. We looked at a lot of different scenarios to get the best value. We did not look at mat slab. It's not very typical out here, but that might have been a good option. I know that's more of an earthquake option on the West Coast. Yeah, Mike. So it seems like, having that insight into, as you're evaluating hotel deals, what might, make more efficient buildings, more efficient construction is a bit of a secret sauce, having that construction piece in-house. How are you guys utilizing that as you guys are underwriting deals, looking for new deals, leveraging that construction piece?
So it's important to have with your contractor and new partners. They're going to be with you from day one. Ideally, you take once covenant entitled or planned project, you're I don't necessarily shopping, but you're working with your GC to find areas to improve the design, whether it's the horizontal construction or the vertical construction. Looking for ways to make the project better, more efficient, and maybe cost less. That's kind of the way that we've approached every project, and what I found to be one of the levers that is, the biggest unlock in development.
And do you guys do work with other hotel developers, or are you guys strictly focused in on your own project development? Um,
You bet. We've actually done other hotels in the San Francisco Bay Area. The Cadillac Hotel in San Francisco is one of them. We've got a few other developers that we work with, and it really depends on what the need is. Um, we're I think pretty good partners.
what are y'all's ideal clients and project types that you guys look to work with?
So Thompson Builders is primarily it's a public works shop. So they're doing infrastructure, roadways. They built the recent expansion of the Bay Bridge connecting Oakland to San Francisco. They did the new Meridian for the Golden Gate Bridge. There's very large public works jobs that are kind of the primary bread and butter. All the development, I don't want to say that it's hobby, but at the end of the day, it kind of is, a profitable hobby that allows, filling in some of those gaps between the larger jobs. So yeah, I'd say there isn't, an ideal partner. It's, we work with cities, counties, municipalities, government agencies,
I imagine
or,
the
private
public
developers.
work pieces are probably more like RFP based, or maybe some previous relationship based. On the hotel pieces, are you guys ever bidding out projects? Are you looking for partnerships at all? What are the since this is radical hospitality, what are the opportunities in the hospitality realm that you guys might have an interest in or be good fits for our audience here?
Flagged and independent hotels. That's definitely an area of interest. We do a lot of multifamily condos and apartments. You name it.
And
We've got
primary region would be the Bay Area region.
yeah,
Okay,
primarily Bay. We'll go as far north as I'd say Lake Tahoe, and as far south as um, it can be the Central Valley, but it really depends on the project.
cool. And I'm super curious with all of the current turmoil with tariffs and rates and immigration. How are you seeing that affect construction pricing, timing right now?
So it's making things a little bit more volatile. Um, there are fewer projects to bid on. There are there's more competition at the end of the day. People are lowering their prices, but I don't know how long that will last at the end of the day. We've been pretty fortunate to stay busy throughout this time, but it's something we're always aware of and watching closely.
Yeah. Would you say if someone's interested in getting into development on right now uh, that would you see the advantages of a little bit of hunger in subcontractor pricing be a good time to look at building, or is it actually just make it more difficult because of the unknowns with immigration and labor? Uh, like if you were to rank like now in terms of like a 1 to 10 to start build, would you consider this a good season to build or a harder season to build?
It's a good season. One of the major shifts that we're seeing in the housing market in particular is, if you're building affordable housing, or if you're able to come from that perspective, I think there's a lot of people that will support a development. We're primarily working with union carpenters, so it's one of those things. It's always going to add to costs, but if I had to rank it, I'd say right now is a 10.
Nice.
It's an amazing time to start, and we're happy to have conversations if it makes sense with anyone from the audience.
I'll say one thing I'm kind of excited about starting construction right now and it being kind of a high interest rate is it is pulling down, you know, in some ways that subcontractor cost. The tariffs make it a little bit more unknown, so you're having to go in with a little bit more buffer. Um, but that interest rate, I assume we're going to lock in, in a year, and I don't see it getting higher from here, which is often a bigger risk. Maybe if it just stays the same, that's fine, but it can take a big, if it goes up, when you're underwriting at a certain level, that's a very difficult thing where it seems like a good time to build when interest rates are low, but actually, building in a higher interest rate gives a little bit more pressure on the subcontractors, a little bit more, opportunity to know that you're probably on the high end of it and it'll probably be coming down. Now it's a little bit more difficult if you're doing spec. A lot of our townhomes, a lot of our custom single family, when you're needing a buyer on the backside, is struggling a little bit. But I'm super excited about the hospitality space because these are long-term holds. Like, you're not looking to be in it and out in a year, and trying to exit. These are legacy projects, and as long as you know that it's going to cash flow, I feel like it's a great time to be building hospitality. So um, if you're interested in doing hospitality in the Bay Area, give Mike a call, guys. So he's doing a lot of cool stuff. All right. Well, Mike, hey man, I really appreciate your time, all your insights. If people want to get in touch with you, or any of your affiliated companies, what's the best place to reach out and find you?
I'm on Instagram at Mike.Demson, LinkedIn as well. Happy to have a conversation, reach out, and yeah, more than happy to help.
Awesome. All right. Thanks so much.